Angelica or whoever's doing this, please send the link again to to Didi Valdez. I know, I'm telling them. Can you please do that? Whoever's in charge of the Zoom link, please. I guess Didi's not getting the correct link. Or maybe just the meeting ID and the code. Thank you.
Good evening, everybody. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yes, sir.
Great, thank you. Straight up 6 o'clock. I think we're waiting on at least one more counselor to have the quorum, so we'll just wait a couple minutes. Thanks.
I tried to send her the link, but it won't allow me since I'm not the one that initiated it.
Thank you, Jeff. Appreciate that.
Mr. Chair, they're working on it right now to try to send it.
She's saying that the email that was sent, it says outdated when she clicks the link. So I gave her the meeting ID and the password. So she's gonna try that. Okay. Thank you, Jeff.
You're welcome.
Dee Dee, you're on.
Hello.
Good afternoon, good evening, Counselor. How are you doing, Counselor Valdez?
I'm doing great, thank you. Thanks. I'm
Good.
sorry for the being a few minutes late, but my invite, when I tried to link in, it said that it was outdated. I don't know why,
Okay,
but I'm here.
okay, awesome, that's great. With that said, I would like to call this Public Works Committee meeting to order for today's August 4th, 2020, and the time is at about 6:04. Welcome everybody to our meeting. With that said, I'm not sure if it's Angelica or if it's BJ, if you could call roll.
This is Angelica. So I'm going to
Hi,
take roll.
Angelica. Okay, thank you, ma'am.
Okay, so Chair Counselor Dennis Tim Salazar,
Present.
Counselor Denise Benavides, Counselor Dorothy Valdez,
Present.
and Counselor John Ramon Vigil.
Present.
Thank you so much, Angelica. I would just like to state for the record also, Counselor Denise Benavides contacted me. She wasn't able to make the meeting. She had a death in her family, so of course she's excused for that. And okay, with that said, before you is the approval of the agenda. Counselors, if you had an opportunity to look over the agenda, I'm looking for a motion for approval.
So moved, Mr. Chair.
Okay, motion's been made by Counselor Vigil.
I'm sorry, Chair Salazar, I was not present at the last meeting, so I don't know if I can vote to approve or not.
I know during the last, I think it was the last committee meetings, in fact, we went over previous Public Works Committee meetings in which I don't think any of us were on the committee. And I think from direction from the city clerk's office, we are able to, as long as, of course, review it, and we are able to approve previous agendas, even if we are not present. Of course, it's at your discretion, but we are allowed to do that, ma'am, if you feel comfortable enough to do so.
Okay, I don't feel comfortable enough. I'm sorry.
Okay, actually, you know what? This is just approval of the agenda. This is just the agenda. This is just for the approval of the agenda. It's not the minutes.
Okay, the agenda, yes. Second motion.
Okay, so there's been a motion. There's a second. Angelica, can you call roll, please?
Okay, so I'm going to call roll again. So Chair Counselor Dennis Tim Salazar.
I'm for the motion.
Okay, Counselor Dennis Benavides, Counselor Dorothy Valdez,
For the motion.
and Counselor John Ramon Vigil.
For the motion.
Thank you. The agenda has been approved. The next item is approval of Public Works Committee meeting minutes. Since Counselor Dee Dee Valdez did mention that she's not comfortable, approving the last minutes, there's only Counselor Vigil and myself, and a Counselor Denise Benavides was present at the last meeting. So if at all possible, I would like to just move these meeting minutes till to be reviewed for next month. And at that point, our Public Works Committee can be able to review those and act on those meeting minutes, if it's okay with Counselor Vigil as well.
Motion to table until September's Public Works Committee meeting, Mr. Chair.
Okay, so with that said, we'll move it to the September meeting to revisit the Public Works meeting minutes of July 7th. Thank you. Next item on the agenda is public comments. I don't see anybody from the public here, but I just want to verify that we don't have anybody from the public for public comments at this time.
No, we do not.
Okay, very good. Thank you. Next item on the agenda is committee member comments. Counselor Vigil or Counselor Valdez, do you have any Public Works Committee member comments at this time?
No, not at this time.
Mr. Chair.
Yes, Counselor Vigil.
I will be bringing something forward. I didn't get specific details at this time regarding Camino Tierra Chuleta there in my district. And I wanted to see, Stephen, I understand that we met with him as Mountains Electric Co-op, and I wanted to see what the status was on an update for the North Prince Drive streetlights. And I know that we did meet with him and you met with Ernesto Gonzalez and Karen Wisdom, and just a little update on that project for us, if you don't mind, Stephen.
Public Works Director Trujillo, go ahead. The floor is yours, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, committee members. So in our meeting, I did include it in my overview with him as city manager and myself met with them. And Ernesto Garcia, the co-op manager, advised the city would need full engineering plans before a quote can even be given for lights for the installation. So in speaking with Diane, engineering plans cost anywhere between 45 to 50,000. So we would have to find the money to get engineering going and able in order for him to give us a quote at that point. So I just wanted to see how the committee feels or how you guys would like me to proceed with that, because already with our budget how it is and proceeding forward, maybe grants or something we could look for.
Councillor Vihil, do you have any follow-up to that, sir?
Stephen, I had spoke with Ernesto, and he didn't say engineering plans. He wanted a plan of where we plan to put lights and what we were looking at doing, and then they would work with us from that point on. But as far as I'm aware from what Ernesto had informed me is not a specific engineering plan, like a whole study, but just kind of like a layout of what we were looking at doing, and the co-op was going to work with us on that end. If there was some miscommunication, I am not sure, but that's what Ernesto did tell me was along those lines, just to see how many lights we were looking at putting, where we wanted to put them. Nothing completely to that level and extent, but it might have been a communication thing, but yeah.
Mr. Chair?
Yeah, yes,
John
go ahead.
Rosillo.
City Manager Martinez, is that you, sir?
Yes, sir. If I have a minute to speak in regards to that subject there, sir.
Definitely, yes, sir. Go ahead, sir.
I'll go ahead. Yes, so Mr. Chair, members of the committee, Councilor John Ramon Vihil. So I did attend that meeting with our Public Works Director, Stephen Trujillo, and the Director for MS, Mr. Gonzalez. We did mention about, the light issue along Prince Drive. We did mention about 12 poles, and the word engineering did come up by him and also his admin, or the executive admin that was there. I do not recall her name at this point, but they did require or did mention about having some engineer plans to move forward to get an exact quote.
Thank you, City Manager. Mr. Hubler, you have a comment or question, sir? Go ahead. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. So when we started working with Public Works to explore this issue following the request last month, we were hopeful that there would be existing HIMAS infrastructure that we could utilize. And it turns out that that's not the case. And so that's why the scope of the project has changed a little bit from a discussion about adding lights to existing poles to what now appears to be required, which is the construction of a number of new poles, basically just for the lights. So that's what's kind of complicated this issue a bit.
Very good. Thank you, sir. Councillor Vihil, do you have any follow-up to that, sir?
No, not at this time.
Okay, very good. Thank you. Is there any further committee member comments at this time? Okay, hearing none, let's move on to the matters from the chair. As we are looking at the agenda, there is no items for recommendation for action items for full council. But I do have a couple of items I do need to bring up. Councillor Didi Valdez and myself did take a Public Works street survey tour last night. We viewed various roads, And again, like I mentioned, we do not have any items for council consideration, but we just recently noticed that there is a time sensitive issue. So in regards to the Public Works Street Survey, I would like to, for our Public Works Director, Stephen Trujillo, to talk a little bit about the tour last night and about these roads that we were able to view. And at the same time, we cannot act on anything, but I think, if I'm correct, that if we're in consensus with it, we could agree that this could go to the city council meeting on August 25th. Yeah, I think the next, not this coming meeting, but the next meeting, because we will not, our Public Works Committee will not be meeting until September. So with that said, if Stephen Trujillo, if you could be able to, of course, speak about it, make a presentation at that point, the counselors on this committee, we could be able to discuss this afterwards. Stephen, you have the floor, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Members of the committee. So that is correct. On our drive yesterday, we had a list of streets. We went out with Street Supervisor Elijah Mares to show the conditions of the streets. In that street survey, I did mention a couple of issues that we do have with those streets. They're in the most need of repair, but also I mentioned the infrastructure that would have to be replaced. And the reason being is if we finish a road, complete it, and it looks really good, and then the infrastructure is failing and we have to go back to the water department or sewer department and work on it, I wouldn't want to be tearing up a brand new road that's a year or two old. So when we're picking these streets, some of them do have newer infrastructure, which I did explain. It would be North McCurdy has newer infrastructure, and we talked about doing the really bad sections with the money, doing portions of it. In my recommendation, I'd go with North McCurdy. And I just want to see how the chair feels and which streets get, from your guys's point of view, which ones you thought, or I would welcome input. That way we can make a decision to move on it. And we're going to need and adopt a resolution that will link funding to a specific street for that $80,000. That was why we had the ride along, and also need to pick and move on it. That way we don't lose out on the funding.
Very good. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Trujillo. In reference to your recommendation, just me personally looking at the streets, I know we have only a certain amount of money to work with, and all of these streets, need repair. But of course, that's not possible at this time. And I was looking at each district through everything. For instance, I did see a desperate need in Calle Lopez, which is district number 2. I did look at Hunter Street, which is district number 1. I'm sorry, yes, yeah, Hunter Street in district number 1. District number 3, La Jolla Street. I found that street to be in severe need of repair. And just like you mentioned, in district number 4, I was looking at North McCurdy Road. So I agree, out of all those, and I just, of course, picked one from each district that, that I thought, are maybe in a little bit more need than others. But as far as North McCurdy Road, I think that is something that is in desperate need. And with that said, Councilor Vigil and Councilor Valdez, would you guys like to give some input on that? I know, Councilor Vigil, you were not able to make it yesterday, but Councilor Valdez was able to make it, and of course, view all these streets. I know, I just like both of your opinion on this and your feedback.
Yes, as we were riding along, I was making notes, and what Director Stephen Trujillo was informing me that a lot of the streets have old infrastructure. So it would be not in the best interest to choose those streets to repair, because in the near future, we would have to break up the new road that we have just replaced. And after riding and looking at all the streets, yes, they all do need repairs. I did notice that the North McCurdy area had really big potholes where the water accumulates. We had water yesterday, so it was a good night to go see what happens when it rains. So my choice would be to choose the North McCurdy. It has the newer infrastructure and it does need repair.
Thank you, Councillor Valdez. Councillor Beal, do you have any comments or feedback at this time, sir?
I have a couple comments. Stephen, what would be the scope of work for McCurdy, North McCurdy Road and just looking at that project ahead of time? And as I understand, it's 80,000 and it's from NMDOT funding, or please enlighten me a little more on that.
Mr. Chair, Councillor John Ramon Vihil, yes, it is DOT funding. And the scope of work that we looked at would be, it's not the entire North McCurdy Road, rather, but it would be in sections, the really bad sections where there's dips and the road is totally, it's just awful on there. We would do like 20, 30-foot sections where they would remove the asphalt, make it more manageable, because that road does have heavy traffic through it. Just on the ride yesterday, we encountered a lot of vehicles going back and forth as well, following us and headed in the other direction. So it would be, it's not a permanent fix, but I think it would make it a lot better for a much travel road on North McCurdy for now, until we could get complete funding to do the entire roadway.
Follow up. So can you identify the location you're talking about, North McCurdy? Is it north of the Bustos is, or?
So it'd be from where it starts to get really bad would be from Hemes View Street, which would be right before Bustos, Calle Morena, and those all the way to the end of Eliano Road.
Okay. All right. So we're talking about a section overlay. So you're talking from Hemes View, you're including Calle Duran, all the way Valley Estates, all the way to the end of the city limits with 80,000, or?
No, so it's gonna be from Hemes View, that's the worst portion. So starting from Calle Sin Nombre north.
Okay.
Like I say, the whole road is in dire need of repair, but those are the worst sections of the road that I feel should be repaired first. In the meantime, while we get the funding to do the entire road.
Okay. And so in the specifications of this grant, do they need to be for a specific roadway, or can they, like, for instance, can they be for patch jobs on multiple roadways?
So it could be patch jobs for multiple roadways. That's why we had the survey, so we could do one of each street, but the only thing is if we do 10 feet in each road that we pick, I mean, it's not gonna make a huge difference, or we could do an entire street. But again, like I said, with this mostly the old infrastructure, if we do repair it and then tearing it up a week after and that, it doesn't make much sense. I believe we need to start from the bottom up. That way we don't have to mess with it for 10, 15 years down the road.
My only concern is regarding that is, we have a lot of potholes in this town, and I don't see that as a complete redoing of an overlay of a street, but what I see is just a preventative maintenance for down the road. And obviously we're going to cut out all the streets, but isn't it, to my understanding, that the water line needs to be replaced, like pretty much for north of Fairview Lane, because it's like a 1/2-inch water line or something. It can't suffice all the businesses that we've had in the growth there. And weren't they planning at one time to run something through McCurdy Road to offset Riverside? I'm not sure, Stephen, so just I'm shooting a blank.
And north of Fairview, no, that line is upgraded, and we did upgrade on Fairview from the intersection of Paseo de Uñate all the way down to the intersection of Riverside. I know all that's new infrastructure because that had to be replaced. It was getting pinholes every other week. So I know that section was, but as far as Fairview, those water lines are in decent condition too.
Okay, all right. And the turnaround table for this is quick turnaround. That's why we're on that deadline. Okay, all right then.
Okay, very good. Thank you, Councillor. Thank you, Stephen. Elijah Mott is, if possible, would you like to make a few comments in reference to our street survey tour yesterday, and anything that you'd like to add, sir? Elijah, I'm not sure if you can hear me, sir. Are you there, Elijah?
He has his mic on.
Yeah, okay. I can hear you now. It kind of came in a little muddled for a second.
Okay, great. I'm sorry about that,
So
sir.
I heard you now.
Yeah, the floor is yours. Just if you have any comments or any suggestions to make as well, we'd appreciate that, sir.
There we go.
Okay, perfect.
Sorry, lost you there for a second. I don't have much more to comment on there. I think the sections we're looking at, North McCurry, we're talking like Dicey Nomada up to the intersection of Mountain View. And we're also looking from Ballast Lane up to where we raised the road right before Daylily. Those are some of the major sections there. They're heavily potholed where they've had deterioration over the years. And it's just to smooth out sections of the road there. So we're not looking at entire lengths. We're looking at, 100 foot, 150 foot on some of these, if even that far. But we're looking at to be able to improve just drivability and quality of driving for people right now. And I know the future infrastructure and re-engineer that road is going to have to come at some point. But for now, I think as Director Trujillo said, it's just being able to improve the quality of the roads right there with what we do have. And then the time sensitive stuff we have there is getting, we have so many months to use it, but we have to be able to get a resolution in place for DOT. And that's what we're trying to get up before this next month. So just to reiterate a little bit more on that.
Okay, very good. Thank you, sir. I appreciate that. Based on the recommendation and the justification, and then also, in reference to Councilor Didi Valdez being able to, see firsthand, like she mentioned, in the rain yesterday was a perfect time. And then, of course, our discussion with you guys for, the lead staff members for Public Works, I'm in agreement. I do feel that, based on the limited amount of money, I do feel as well that North McCurdy Road would greatly benefit. Again, like I think Stephen did mention too, there was heavy traffic during that time. And it's not just that time, it's any time. There's always heavy traffic on, all of McCurdy Road. But yeah, specifically just being able to be on North McCurdy Road at that time, it just like, consistent heavy traffic, and the rain had just passed. And I think that's a really good suggestion, is that we move on that. So I guess at this time, I would just like to ask Councilor Didi Valdez and Councilor John Ramon Vigil, if you guys are in agreement with this. Of course, it's not a motion or anything like that, but if we are in agreement, we could we agree that, that this should go to City Council on August, I think the 25th meeting. Councilor Vigil, I think you have your hand up, sir.
Yeah, yes, Mr. Chair. I understand McCurdy Road is a major street here in town. Did we have any other major streets? Calle Lopez is obviously not a major street. Pueblo is not a major street. Did we have any other major streets that even handle some of the traffic capacity that McCurdy Road does?
I personally was looking at La Jolla Street. That's another street. And then, of course, I wouldn't call Hunter Street a major street, but of course, there's
No, I don't either.
there's heavy traffic that goes through there. So maybe possibly La Jolla Street. Stephen or Elijah, do you guys have anything to add to that, sir?
Members of the committee, sorry, Elijah.
No problem.
I agree also with La Jolla Street. That would be our second choice, or my second choice, because that is heavily traveled. Again, it'll be, I know the entrance is pretty bad, and it'd be portions along the entire street. Go ahead, Elijah.
Okay, members of the council, Mr. Chair, Mr. Director there. Also, I mean, that's what I was going to be looking at was La Jolla Street, since it is a thoroughway from one road to another. A lot of traffic goes there from South McCurdy through. So just same thing as Director Trujillo is having there. That would also be my second choice.
And follow up, Lower San Pedro is a state road, correct? It's not city?
Correct.
Okay. All right.
Okay, very, very. So councilors, we have that.
Mr. Chair, I don't think it's appropriate for us to take a formal vote, but I think just if we're all in agreement, I think it'd be fine.
Okay, yeah, I agree. We cannot take a formal vote because it was not on the agenda as an action. 72 hours prior. But yeah, I think, yeah, just like, an informal agreement. And at that point, we could
I'm
direct-
okay with it.
Okay. very
Uh,
good. Councilor
Me
Valdez.
too. Yes,
Okay.
I'm in agreement.
Okay, very,
I'm in agreement with you on North McCurdy.
okay, very good. Thank you. So with Councilor Valdez, Councilor Vihil, and myself, we're all in agreement with this. Going back to our city manager and our public works director, Stephen Trujillo, our recommendation, not a vote, of course, I'd like to stress that. But if we could possibly look at you guys, if you guys are okay with this, to add it to the city council meeting for August.
Yes, Mr. Chair, Javier here.
Very good. City Manager Martinez. Yes, sir.
Yes, Mr. Chair, members of the committee, that is fine with me. And of course, the purview to the chair of the committee to go ahead and move this item forward due to time restraints. I'm absolutely fine with that, putting on the August 25th agenda. And just to really quick to clarify on this grant from NMDOT, the grant amount is for 60,000 plus the 20,000 on the city match, so a total of 80,000. Just to clarify.
Okay, very good. Thank you, sir. So with agreements, we can move this on to the August 25th city council meeting, and the entire governing body will be able to view it at this time and be able to vote on this. Thank you. We appreciate that. The next item on the matters from the chair is in regards to another time-sensitive issue. It was on the agenda under the Planning and Land Use Department. It's the Espanola median safety ordinance. But at this time too, due to no items, being before us for action, this is something else that I feel strongly like that it's time sensitive, and I think it needs to go before our city council as soon as possible too, based on some justification recently given. So with that said, I would like Planning and Zoning Director Richard Hubler to speak a little bit about it. Then at that time, councilors, we could be able to have a little bit of a discussion. Mr. Hubler, the floor is yours, sir.
Thank you very much. Mr. Chair, members of the committee. So this draft of a median ordinance is one that we're looking to continue on with some of the recent work we've been doing around pedestrian safety, in particular, the Fairview Safety Project that I'll speak about a little bit later. And this ordinance has gone through legal review both with our attorney, whose comments are attached here, as well as with the city attorney, Long and Comer. And they felt it was appropriate to bring it forward to you guys. So I just want to stress a couple points. This, like we said, is designed to both encourage and kind of help folks to stay off of the medians that are not designed for pedestrians. As you guys may or may not be aware, from the public works side, street design includes a variety of different pedestrian friendly and pedestrian safety features, including medians that are designed for pedestrians to stand on in the middle of crossing the streets. And then it also includes designs that are simply there to isolate and separate traffic. And we have a mix of those in the city. More often than not, the medians we have are traffic focused and not as pedestrian friendly as they could be. Some of the stuff that we're working with the recommendations from the Fairview corridor study are around making some medians a little bit more pedestrian friendly. But that study really highlighted the fact that we do have along that particular corridor, but elsewhere in the city as well, a substantial number of crashes. And thankfully, we have seen a very limited number of pedestrian involved incidents. There's been a few, of course. There was a death last year along Fairview itself. But more than anything, we're just exceedingly lucky, in my opinion, based on the numbers of crashes that we do have, rear-end crashes, sideswipe crashes, where people could be substantially more injured than they are. So this is something that originally came to the interest of this committee about 6 or 8 months ago, and we've been working through a number of issues related to that to get to this point. One of the big ones, of course, and a kind of constant concern about limiting public access to public spaces is about the reason behind that limitation. there's frequently a concern about freedom of speech, freedom of congregation. And so it's very important to stress that this particular median ordinance that we've got is content neutral, meaning that it does not matter for what reason you're standing on an unsafe median. If you're standing on an unsafe median, it's an unsafe practice. So we're working with collecting a little bit more data to kind of bolster the safety aspect of this, and we'll have that before, collected before we bring this to the full council for consideration. But I just wanted to present it to you guys here again. It's a little bit refined version of what was originally presented back to this committee, albeit with different members last October. And I'm happy to answer any questions that folks might have.
Thank you, Mr. Hubler. Is this something that you're also wanting to see if it could go before the city council at our August 25th meeting? Is that something you're looking due to the time sensitivity, or what's your take on this? What's your recommendation?
Yeah, I'm not certain if we'll have enough stuff ready for the August 25th meeting, but basically so we're bringing this both through this committee and then tomorrow night through the Public Safety Committee for discussion and consideration. And our hope is that if each body decides that this is something that we want to move forward, then we'll continue to work like we have been to collect the data. We're doing a median analysis right now. Our GIS guys spent most of last week actually out in the field, measuring medians, measuring slope of medians, identifying all those, mapping them out. We did a speed limit analysis last week to determine which sections of town are 35 miles and below and or above 35 miles. So we're working on actively working on accumulating the data necessary to support this. And we'd like the permission and the recommendation from this body and from the public safety body to move this forward to the city council, the next available meeting when that information is ready. I don't know for sure if it'll be the August 25th, but it may be.
Okay, very good. Just a question, did the Public Safety Committee make the deadline to make it an action item for their meeting tomorrow? Is it an action item on their side?
It is an action item on their side, yes. And my apologies for the miscommunication from our end that prevented it from being as such on this agenda.
Okay, no, that's absolutely fine. We're just trying to get a better understanding of this. Councilor Vigil or Councilor Valdez, do you have any comments, recommendations, or what's your pleasure at this time?
Chair, this is Didi Valdez.
Yes, Councilor Valdez, go ahead, ma'am.
I would like to know where the sidewalks would be located. I remember being in one meeting, and I think one was going to be by the Lotaburger and the Convento. Are those still the locations? Are there any additional locations? I would like to know where those sidewalks are going to be built.
So this particular ordinance is not directly related to the construction of new sidewalks. This is an analysis of existing medians in the middle of the road to determine those that are safe for standing on, that are wide enough. For instance, the one at the Y there, the nicely landscaped one in front of Chimayo Trading Post, that one is more than large enough for folks to stand on. On the other hand, some of the other medians that we've got, and in some cases, a total absence of medians, just painted stripes, are not safe for people to stand in the middle of the road. So this does not directly address use of the sidewalks. It simply addresses basically standing on the medians in the middle of the roadways. But we're not proposing through this ordinance to install any new ones. The Fairview pedestrian safety study that I mentioned, and I'll talk a little bit more again later on, that one does suggest building some what's called a pedestrian safety refuge at the intersection of Fairview and US 84-285. But that's just their suggestion at the kind of design phase of that overall project. And that's, a period of time before anything and their recommendations will actually be constructed.
Thank you.
Very good. Thank you, Councilor. Councilor Vigil, you have your hand up, sir. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to be sure that we've verified this with our legal counsel, that this is not violating on anyone's public rights to congregate. I know this has come up before and we've received notice from the ACLU. As long as we've had that all vetted out, I think it's perfectly fine by me. And Richard, maybe you could give me a brief little thing just quickly that it's okay.
Yes, thank you, Councilor Vihil and members of the committee. So that was one of the things that the legal review by our attorney brought up, is that any ordinances or restrictions like these often, times tread that fine line between public safety or public good and, other civil rights. So pursuant to the suggestion of our attorney, Mr. Audio, the city attorney, after their review, has reached out and begun a discussion with the ACLU. That's part of what's driving our data collection at this point, is to answer some particular questions about, the potential impact that this may have. For instance, one of the concerns that was raised was, what percentage of our major streets where we have medians are 35 miles an hour or slower? And it turns out about 60% of our total roadways are 35 miles an hour or slower. And then what percentage of our medians are wide enough for folks to stand on? And we're currently working through finding that answer. So, Councilor Vihil, in answer to your question, this has been very thoroughly reviewed, and is part of the reason it's taken us from October to now to get to this point where we are.
Okay, very good. Thank you. Is there a follow-up, Councilor Vihil, at this time?
No, thank you.
Okay, very good. So at this time, with all this stated, of course, it's not an action item, just like the previous item. But at this point, if this committee is okay with this, an informal okay, at that point, I would like to ask our city manager if we could take this to the full council again at a future meeting in August, whether it's the August 11th or the August 25th meeting. So I just want to get your take, both of you councilors, to see what your pleasure is, and if you're in agreement, or if it's something that you would like to hold off on for a formal vote in September. So what are your thoughts? Councilor Valdez, Councilor Vihil, please let me know your thoughts on this.
More than anything, Mr. Chair, I think public safety should review this, and I think it's more important that public safety gives the okay on this than us, especially because we're trying to come from the notion where this is for the public good and the public welfare. And yes, I understand it's our city infrastructure, and that's what this committee oversees, but I think if anything, it's public safety that should be making the final call on this. But thanks for bringing it to us, Richard.
Definitely. I think the more information for this committee, the better. And of course, knowledge and how we could be able to help. Councilor Didi Valdez, do you have any recommendations or suggestions at this time, ma'am?
I'll go ahead and agree with Councilor Vihil about the public committee to deal with it. It is a public issue when people stand in the middle of roads on the medians.
Okay, very good. So with that said, Richard, would you be able to maybe sometime after the Public Safety Committee meeting tomorrow, can you give us like the committee an update, our committee an update, just in regards to how things go, and then from there we'll take it from there if that works. So okay, very good. Okay, thank you. I'll appreciate that. So next item on the agenda, of course, we don't have any recommendations for the full council for action items. So let's move on to the updates. We got the General Service Department, our GSD Director, Jeff Sargent. You can please give us a department overview. And also, since you're on as well, thank you very much for all the COVID updates. And then if there's anything else you have in regards to the coronavirus as well, please feel free to let us know as well. Mr. Sargent, do you have the floor, sir?
Good evening, Committee Chair Salazar and committee members. This evening, as part of my department overview, the item number 1 was for the GPS navigation system for the city vehicles, for 75 city vehicles. We're getting a lot closer. The only problem that we ran into today is that based on the COVID issue starting early this year, all of our quotes have since expired. So I have sent out emails to the vendors to give me revised estimates this week so we can push to get that up and running. And if you noticed my overview, it said that under action that the costs, getting costs per department to be able to distribute the bill accordingly between all departments. Second item was the online auction of assets. And I have not received updates from certain departments as far as items for disposal, as far as vehicles. The only person that did respond was Director Richard Hubler for planning and land use. And so I'm waiting on fire, and I believe water department and wastewater might have a few vehicles that we're looking at replacing. So I'm waiting on that information from them so that I can get that list together to go to full council for approval of disposal of property. Penny Garcia Roybal Pool, that we have been doing some work on vandalism repair because of people that have broken in and tried to break glass. They broke some of our glass block, probably about 20 some pieces. So we had some destruction there. And I am also working currently on getting all new door hardware installed for that site and getting an estimate from our local locksmith to try and get that set up. So because we've had the door hardware is the original door hardware. So it's archaic and it's not up to current code. And I'd like to get that up to current code because there are issues with the front entry and also the exits that are not meeting the criteria for push bars. And because we have deadbolts on them as well. So that's a big no-no. So we're looking at different ideas as to how to go about that to be able to get into code, but at the same time, having a secure facility as far as behaviors from people. The CDBG for Ranchitos Park, we do have the 100% plans on hand. They were provided to us, and we have provided all. We have submitted our information to the Department of Public DFA for approval, and they are running behind because of COVID as well. So we are in limbo currently and waiting for them to give us any direction. Hopefully, once we do get that direction, we can go out to bid so we can get this project rolling. But I'm anticipating that based on the circumstances of this early year, that our project might have to be extended by DFA because of the COVID-19. Next item is the pergolas at the Plaza Pergola painting. We had pretty much almost completed everything. We're up to 80%. I just received the purchase order for the paint, for the final set of paint. So we can do the completion of the painting as soon as that paint arrives, probably next week. Valdez Park renovation through facility build. I am just waiting for them to notify me when we will be able to start the project so we can get that moving. And the fire station addition through facility build is going to be placed on hold. And the reason it's going to be placed on hold is because we did receive notification that the 700,000 has been approved. So instead of doing a small addition to the existing fire station 1, we might be using that money towards design for a brand new fire station. But that's something that's still in the planning stages between Chief Padilla, City Manager Martinez, and other entities. As far as our COVID update, we've been doing very well. Our numbers have not grown as they had been in the past month. I think the most that we've had since last Thursday, we've had a growth of about 7 cases. The ones that I did find from last night were specifying that the growth of the 2 of those cases were in Espanola, for the zip code of Espanola. The Jicaria has held at 190, which is great. They have not grown because that was our hotspot. So as they update the DOH website, I do gather that data so that I can share with you folks at least at the beginning and end of the week. And that is all for my department. I stand for any questions.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. Sargent. Counselor John Ramon Hill, I think you have a question, sir?
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Jeff, for all these great updates. I wanted to see what's the state of getting the trees cleaned up on the north side of the Prince Ranch. Were we moving anything on that? They're starting to encroach on the neighbors there, and it's kind of like a fire hazard. And I know that Stephen we had talked about it like a year ago with then Deputy Chief Tafoya about getting it cleaned up there, but it's become a nuisance for the neighbors down there, all the Prince Ranch. And I actually was going to come up and ask you, and I'll ask you at this juncture, if we could just try and get the weeds maintained around the foundation of the Prince house there at the ranch. That house is from the 1870s, and I would hate for the roots from the weeds to get into and just destroy that foundation of that home. It's a beautiful home, and the least we can, beautiful historic home, and the least we can do is at least maintain the weeds. I know you guys are short-skinned, but the weeds are really bad. Not the weeds, the actual trees are really bad on those neighbors that live there just north of the Prince Ranch. And it may be, I know Stephen had been working on something. If we can look about getting back to that and cleaning up all that, because it's starting to encroach on the neighbors and becoming a fire hazard.
So Committee Chair Salazar and Committee Member John Ramon Vigil, I will get with Director Stephen Trujillo, and we will go over there and do an inspection of the information that you have just given us and see when we could get that scheduled to get accomplished. As you did mention, we are short-staffed. Currently, I am 2 people short in the Parks Department due to medical issues, and I know Elijah in Streets is down, I believe, 2 staff members as well. But we will see when we can get to that. I do not want to give you a definitive date, as I do not have that information, and I don't want to give you false hope until we are caught up doing everything else that we've got on our different schedules.
Follow up, Mr. Chair.
Yes, go ahead, Counselor.
You know, I think it's really important. Possibly, I know that they had worked on it on the south side, and Stephen probably can remember. They cleaned up on the south side of the ranch, and they did that with the fire department. Maybe we can reach out to the city fire department, Chief Padilla, and look at doing the north side, and then possibly even bringing in Awasana, because I mean, it's really bad down there, and if there was, God forbid, a fire, I mean, all those houses would go up from just those trees. I mean, it's really gotten really bad down there. So just looking at all the partnerships, and I think that there's grants through Wildland, and obviously we'd have to look at that, but it's just really gotten out of hand down there, especially now because of the moisture. But thank you, Jeff. I appreciate you.
Yes, sir.
Very good. Thank you. Stephen Trujillo, Mr. Trujillo, go ahead, sir.
Yes, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. So I did talk with Chief Ron Padilla on this issue, and we are talking about burning it in smaller piles. There is a ton of piles, and the streets department is going to have to break it up into smaller sections, and then we're going to start burning them. As far as cutting the trees down, like Jeff said, we could go look into it on that portion. It was more of burning that I had talked to Chief Padilla about, but we will see if we could schedule times to get it cleaned up, and maybe I'll have the other departments come out and help in a day, and we could clear it out in that area by the home.
Very good. Thank you, sir. Counselor Didi Valdez, do you have any questions or comments at this time for Mr. Sargent?
No, I really appreciate all the information, emails that he sends out, keeps us informed. Thank you, Mr. Sargent.
You're very welcome, Committee Member Didi Valdez.
I'd like to say it as well. Thank you very much, Mr. Sargent. You have a lot of irons in the fire, and thank you very much for your hard work. We really appreciate that.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. If there's not anything else, Jeff, I think we'll move on to the next item. Are you anything else you have to add, Jeff, at this time? Okay, very good. Thank you. Let's move on now to, actually, I think we could cover water and wastewater department with Water Operations Supervisor Antonio Chavez. Mr. Chavez, you're on the, yes, you are. You're there. You have the floor, sir.
Mr. Chair, members of the committee, if you have any questions, I'm here to answer any of the items that I've presented to you.
Okay, very good, Mr. Chavez. Councilors, if you had a chance to be able to view the items as Mr. Chavez has mentioned, do you have any comments or questions at this time for Antonio regarding water or wastewater? Okay, I don't think there's any questions. So you got away pretty easy, Mr. Chavez, but just want to thank you and your staff as well for your hard work day in and day out. We appreciate you guys. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir. Members of the committee.
Thank you. Next item on the agenda is item K, our streets department. We got the street supervisor, Elijah Mades. You have the floor, sir, if you'd like to give an update. Also, with yesterday's tour that we took, I got to have, you know, pretty good talk with Elijah as we were walking this, driving the streets and everything. And I think I was able to get a lot of good information, something that we normally don't get to do as counselors, you know, on, you know, very often. Kind of got to see things through their eyes. And yeah, it was quite an eye opener, and just very appreciative of all that you guys do as well. Elijah, you have the floor, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. I have my my report I have there for you guys. If you guys have any kind of questions for me, I don't have anything too big right now. The major stuff we had, of course, was that ride along and seeing what we're going to be able to proceed with. The only other update that I have that is not on there is I'm currently working with a company now to finish up using some of the funds we had previous and we had allocated for Calle Redonda. So I should be getting some kind of quotes to see how much road we're going to be able to do there. That road, of course, you know, we don't have enough to do the entire thing. It's a large road in there, but we're trying to get some areas of safety concerns, places that we would possibly be plowing, and then where we have some water flow issues, trying to do some repairs on the roads that way to be able just for on the safety side and get them, you know, as much as we can done there. I know it's not on my report, but it's something I just started working on this last week, trying to get that finished up. So other than that, anything else that's on there, if you guys have any questions for me or any concerns, please.
Okay, very good. Thank you, Mr. Mades, for that update as well. Councilor Vigil, I think you have a question for Mr. Mades.
I actually do. You know, I got a call from the Garcias there at the end of Filigonio and Coronado, and they've called me about it in the past, and I've never been able to quite understand it. But apparently when they redid the dip at the end of Coronado and they floated into Filigonio, the way the water comes, I guess it doesn't drain out correctly, and it creates a flooding situation, and it runs into their yard. And this is on the south side of Don Filigonio, and I guess it's because of the dip. And now with all the rain, Elijah, if you could just keep an eye on it and see what exactly. But I've received calls from all the family about it. But I guess the way the dip runs, it collects in puddles from South Coronado, and instead of flowing down Filigonio on the curve, it goes into their property. So I don't know if you've seen that or such, but it has become, I guess, an issue again now that it rained, and it's been an issue for about a year now, and they've been pushing it now with the rains coming lately. So if you guys could just keep an eye on that and see. I don't completely understand. I haven't seen it myself, but it seems to be a problem.
Yes, sir. We've been trying to keep an eye on that. I've received those concerns, and I haven't been able to pinpoint as to where it's coming on there, because that dip has been there for a few years now.
Yeah.
It's been there for almost, I would say, at least since 2016, I believe, somewhere around there. It might have been possible that we installed that. I've been trying to figure out the curbs are clear. I'm not seeing any signs of it flowing over, you typically see debris and stuff going onto dirt where it gets carried and flowed down. So I'm trying to keep a good eye, an eye on that to see what's happening there, and then if I can pinpoint what's going on, then any possible solutions at that point.
Yeah, and he did tell me, Richard did tell me that he had reached out to you about it, Elijah, and he used to work for DOT, and then his brother Teddy's an engineer, and so I haven't completely seen it, and I don't understand, but I guess like you're saying, keep an eye on it. But the water runs from the dip, and it runs into their property, and it floods their garage every time it rains, and it's because it collects at that dip from the South Coronado drainage. So thank you, Elijah.
Yes, sir.
Very good. Thank you. Counselor Didi Valdez, do you have any questions for Mr. Elijah Matas at this time?
I just wanted to thank him for going on the ride along. I was not in the same vehicle as you two were, but thank you for working overtime. Even the two admins that were there, we were out till after 7 o'clock, and I appreciate you guys working overtime.
Thank you.
Very good. Thank you. Counselor Didi, I'm not sure if they had pizza and Sonic for you, but they had some in the truck for me. So I'm not too sure if you got the same.
Man, I missed out on the pizza and Sonic.
Right. Yeah, no, I'm just kidding. I just had to throw that in there. But it was awesome. It was a very good ride along. Thank
Yes.
you. Thank you, Elijah. We appreciate you, sir.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on to the next item is our Planning and Land Use Department. We got Planning and Land Use Director, Richard Hubler. Mr. Hubler, you have the floor, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. So there's several things on our list here of ongoing projects. A couple things that I wanted to highlight in particular. The ADA transition plan. When we last spoke in July, we were expecting a kickoff shortly thereafter from our consultants. That did indeed happen. They were here for just short of a week altogether, and they completed the facilities review during that time frame. They're hoping to get us a draft version of their report here this month, and then they'll be coming back at the end of this month, first part of September, to complete the roadway portion. That's an evaluation of the sidewalks for that kind of compliance, which we expect to be relatively quick. The huge chunk of the self-assessment here is related to all the facilities we have. We don't have much in the way of sidewalks, and what we do have is generally non-compliant. So that's a relatively easy analysis. The other thing I did want to highlight is the Fairview Corridor Safety Study. You guys are going to hear a lot more about that next Tuesday. We actually just received the final version of the report this afternoon, in fact. So that's going to the City Council for it's kind of adoption, but we're also nominating that study for an award, and so that'll be part of the meeting next week. But there's a number of very innovative kind of solutions. We received several different comments from folks directly adjacent to Fairview. My favorite of which was a gentleman who said, anything we do would be best. Even the worst plan possible would be better than what's there. So that was obviously a little bit of a low bar, but still something really exciting to hear. He did have very positive comments about the suggestions that were made in the report as well. So as I mentioned, you'll be hearing quite a bit more about that as we move forward. And then the third and final thing I wanted to highlight, because it directly impacts this committee, is that we've been working with the Streets Department and the Public Works Department for a while now to do some transportation planning. Those of you that were on the council last fall may remember that we actually put some, our winter, I guess, December, January timeframe, added some projects onto the ICIP in order to get them potentially funded. We actually got several projects funded this spring through capital outlay, nearly all of which was vetoed by the governor, unfortunately, because of COVID. So we're ready to go back again for that second go around. We've also got a number of projects ready for what's called the Local Government Transportation Planning Fund. This was the $50 million of kind of local money that was handed out last spring that we weren't ready for. We're ready for it now, and actually we got confirmation today from the Northern Pueblos Regional Transportation Planning Organization. Big mouthful, but great group. And they reviewed our PIFs back in May, offered some comments. We made those corrections, submitted those. We've got a meeting again tomorrow with that organization, but they sent an email this afternoon to say that had been forwarded to DOT for their quarterly review meeting. So we're hoping that those projects get onto the list basically for next spring. should the state find money to fund that program. So we're moving forward with road projects. And just to give you an idea, that includes major construction like Camino Miramontes in the neighborhood of a couple million, to much smaller engineering and planning projects for things like East Pueblo Drive or the Starlighter Loop, Car Lane kind of street. So a variety of different things. And as we get more information on anything with that, we'll certainly bring it back to this committee. I'm happy to answer any questions anybody might have.
Richard, I had a question in regards to the RTPO sending it over to, well, you guys sending it over to NMDOT. Is it going to be the Planning Bureau or is it the D5, or both of them are going to be reviewing it?
It's my understanding that they've gotten a little more formally organized, I guess, with their review and approval process. So they're now having quarterly meetings, and it's my understanding that both Joe Moriarty from the Planning Bureau, as well as Javier Sanchez from the District 5 office, are participating in those meetings. So the plan, as I understand it, and I've not been to a meeting, unfortunately, I missed the last couple since this has really kind of taken effect. But as I understand the plan is that they're getting the full DOT review kind of at once on a quarterly basis for all the projects that have come in, so that when the NPRTPO manages to meet to list those projects in order to prioritize them, they've basically all been fully vetted and are ready to go on whatever list they belong on for funding.
Very good. Good news. Very good news. So just cross our fingers and, hope for the best in the, coming future with this. So that's awesome. Great work, guys. Thank you very much. Councilors John Ramon B. Hiller, Councilor Didi Valdez, do you have any comments or questions for Mr. Hoover at this time?
I just wanted to say, Mr. Chair, thank you, Richard. They tore down that property there on Cayo Rodriguez, the one that burned down, and I'm really happy that eyesore is gone, and it's good to see it gone.
Thank you, Councilor. And we've been working with that property owner, Mr. Moya, for a little bit of time now to help get that done. And now we're actually working with a gentleman about redevelopment of that property. It'll stay under Mr. Moya's ownership, but they're floating some different ideas about how to turn that back into something that benefits the community and the city. So we're excited about that.
Okay, very good. Councilor Valdez, do you have any comments, questions at this time?
I just am really excited about all the possibilities that may be coming in the future. And hopefully the DOT is generous with us.
Very true. I could not agree more. Yes.
We're very hopeful as well. And one other thing I should mention, actually, and I apologize for apparently not getting it on the list, is that we've been working with the DOT related to the intersection in front of the plaza. We've had conversations with Chair Salazar. We've had conversations with transportation and engineer who also sits on our planning commission. We've had ongoing conversations with DOT to try and make sure that as they continue to move forward in their process of fixing that intersection, that they do so in a way that benefits the city. So that's something that, again, we'll be getting into a little bit more next week with the full city council as we consider a resolution supporting a particular option for that intersection.
Okay, very good. We look forward to that. I must also add, a couple of weeks ago, I just happened to pop into the planning department. I got to meet with Mr. Huber, and I just like to add that your staff is very hardworking. You guys have a lot going on. You guys have many projects going on at the same time, and I was very impressed. Of course, that was only a brief meeting, but just a brief be able to talk to a couple of your employees as well. But just like to commend you guys. Very good job well done, and thank you guys for your hard work as well. We appreciate that, sir.
Thank you very much.
Okay, next item on the agenda is we're moving on to the overview of the Public Works Department. Our Public Works Director, Mr. Steven Trujillo, sir. Go ahead, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. So on my overview, one of the things I wanted to mention was specifically the State Road 76 project. I've been getting a lot of questions for that. It had been extended 2 weeks, but I just wanted to let you know we will open the bids next Thursday at 2 p.m. and then it'll be taken to council on the 25th of August. So that's an update, and then after that we'll be able to proceed with construction after that. So it's been a long time waiting, and I'm glad we're finally getting to close that portion of it. Another one was faded sign replacement that I added on here. I'm not sure if you've noticed, but there are some signs. I guess it was a bad batch with DOT. Elijah and myself have been out. We're gonna start taking pictures of all the faded signs and turning them into DOT. That way they could get them replaced to look better. So that's something new that we're working on. And then I will stand for any questions if any of you counselors have.
Okay, Stephen, thank you for bringing that up. In fact, on the ride yesterday, in fact, Elijah showed me, those specifics, and yeah, just I guess as a little bit of time has passed, so that's a very good thing to be able to look at that and be able to get those replaced. I think there's quite a few irons in the fire that's been a long time coming, but there's significant progress. And just want to thank you and your entire staff for a job well done, including Angelica and BJ. Thank you guys as well for your hard work. Councilor Vihil or Councilor Valdez, do you guys have any comments or questions at this time for Stephen?
And also, Mr. Chair, I would also like to add, I know it was mentioned earlier in the meeting, for Camino Tierra Archuleta from North Prince by Councilor Vihil. I spoke with Mr. Roberto Archuleta this afternoon, went and drove out to the property, and he just had questions about where his connections would have to be and stuff. I gave him all the information that he needed, so he'll be getting with our utilities department to fill out the application, get it paid so we could get him connected. So it was pretty simple, just needed a little bit of guidance.
Thank you for that, Stephen. I had heard from a third person and you didn't know exactly what he was inquiring about. I thought he was looking at something else.
Okay, very good. Thank you, Mr. Trujillo. Do you have anything else to add before we move on to adjourn?
No, sir, if there is not any other questions, that's all I have on my end. Thank you.
Okay, very good. I think this was a very, very productive meeting, and of course a little bit of a roadmap to continue moving forward. With that said, if there's no other business before this committee, we have tentatively our next meeting scheduled for September 1st. So the next meeting is for September is going to be Tuesday, September 1st at 6 p.m. And if there's no other items to before this committee, I'm looking for a motion for adjournment.
So moved, Mr. Chair, to adjourn.
There's been a motion.
I second it.
Okay, Councilor Valdez, there's a second. Just for formality, Angelica, would you be able to take roll, please?
Chair Counselor Dennis Tim Salazar,
For the motion.
Counselor Dorothy Valdez,
For the motion.
and Counselor John Ramon Vihil.
In favor of the motion.
Okay, very good. Motion passes. Thank you all for your hard work. Thank you very much for your hard work as well, councilors. And we'll see you all soon. You guys have a great evening. Thank you.
Have a good evening.
Thank you.
Have a good evening, counselors. Appreciate your time.
Good night, everyone.
Good night.
Thank you.